Hey everyone, I'm Abby from the Left-Handed Typist, in case you don't already know. Today I'm answering a series of questions I got in celebration of Martin Hospitality turning 1. I had 7 people submit the questions, and instead of doing it like by person, I'm just going to tell you real quick who submitted questions. I had Lisa, Jonathan, Ashley, Hosanna, Emily, Kellen, Sarah, and Jessica. And they are all pretty frequent participants on my blog, so that's awesome. Thank you guys so much for the questions. I think I've got like 27 or something here, so I'm going to go through these as quickly as I can. First, did your characters ever do anything you didn't plan or want them to do? Like, did they ever have a mind of their own? Well, yes. I'm trying to think of a specific instance, though. I guess Gemma ended up being a little more sarcastic than she was supposed to be, and not that it was a bad thing. She just kind of had her own personality. And then Annalise kind of ended up having her own thread that I did not intend from the beginning. That's something that kind of came out as I wrote. So yeah, those two for sure. And Holly just kind of wrote herself, so yeah, definitely a mind of her own, that one. Next is, what were the first parts of the story to fall into place? The characters, plot, premise. I would say the general idea came first of having a pregnant girl who took refuge with this family that was very different than her. And so that's what came first, and Gemma was basically came along with that, and the general idea of the Martin family did too, and so it didn't take too much from there. Who was the first to read it? Jamie Foley was the first to read it. Y'all have seen me do some blog tour stuff for her. I don't know that she was the first one to read it all the way through. Katie Grace might have been the first one to read it all the way through. Not even in finished versions. This would be early stuff. And then otherwise, my beta readers and the people who bought copies right as I published it last year were the first, final edition readers. But Jamie was my very first point person. 3 things your characters have gone through that you never have. Well, obviously, I've never had a baby, so, but I have a lot of siblings, so that wasn't too hard to write about. I've also never lived in an apartment like Gemma. And what else have I never done? I've never actually lived in Kansas. I've only visited a few times. And I've never shucked corn or done anything with... That's not true. I planted corn once, and my Labrador got out, and she crushed it all right as it was, tasseling out, and I was very sad. So, in general, I made the setting a little harder on me than it had to be, but it's very much what I had in mind for it, and I'm happy I stuck with that. Hold on, I lost my questions here. Okay. Sorry, here we go. What was the hardest part of writing Martin Hospitality? I want to say it was... Well, the hardest part of it was being done writing it, being done editing it is what really kind of freaked me out for the first time. But it wasn't actually writing it. I guess I felt like I bogged down a little bit in the second half where Jim is at her apartment. And for those of you who haven't read the book, don't worry, I'm gonna try and remember to give a spoiler warning before I say anything that's gonna ruin the plot for you guys. So I'll try to be good about that. So yeah, I guess it was kind of the apartment part. I have a hard time making sure that when I'm writing everyday life stuff, Martin Hospitality is a very slice of life story. I want to make sure it's not boring, and I can't really tell sometimes. So that is why I need you guys for feedback. I already read that one. 5 ways in which you were similar to your characters. Okay. I'm like a mix of Annalise and Gemma. Yeah. My siblings would tell you I'm Annalise, but I wouldn't do spoiler warning. Okay, I'm gonna hint at something here, so cover your ears. Annalise kind of has her own thread of doing something behind her parents' back, and I wouldn't do that. but being kind of the bossy, like, what is your problem, older sister. Yeah, I get that label. And then Gemma, I guess, a little bit, just because she was my main character. I'm sure I came through in her dialogue especially. I've had some people tell me that, and that's funny. And let's see, what other ways besides Annalise's kind of personality sometimes. I don't know. How else am I similar? I guess homeschooling family, the conservative homeschooling family with lots of siblings, that was kind of my point of reference. So I hope that answers that question. Worst thing anyone has ever said about my book. I don't know. I mean, I've gotten one-star review, but it wasn't even, like, it was a fairly, my friends would disagree, but I felt like it was a fairly balanced review. I didn't feel like it fit the 1 star. I would have called it like a 2-star review, except that's not what the girl rated it. And so, I mean, she took it to have some like teenage rebellion themes in it, which is not what I was going for. And just some things like that was really just kind of reading it differently than I tried to write it, which is bound to happen eventually. So, but I don't know, I guess I feel like there have probably been a few reviews or something where people were like, oh yeah, okay, well here's one thing. Most people despise Mr. Martin. And that, he's like my favorite character. So it's funny to me because he is very abrasive, but at the same time, he kind of has his own story arc of like redemption, almost like he's already a Christian, but his character develops, and so it's funny to me the differences you can see in how people interpret that. But I can't think of anything where I was like, oh, how could you do that? I guess except for the 1-star review where I was like, oh, it's a bummer that she, didn't, I guess, see what I was trying to get at. So, oh, and then a follow-up was, what was the best thing? Honestly, I was reading through some of my Goodreads reviews again recently, and something I think Jonathan had said was that I was really good at making everyday life interesting, and I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness, because it freaks me out that I'm not good at that. I mean, I know people wouldn't enjoy the story as much if they thought it was boring, but hearing someone actually say that, I was like, thank you. And I always love it when people like Josiah or, whatever. Or it's funny to me when people go on and on about, like, the cat or the baby, because to me it was like, oh yeah, cat and baby, like, they're just part of the story, and they were there kind of to get that reaction, I guess, but to me, I could hardly even tell if I'd made it, like, worth the character's time, and everybody adored them, so that was good. Let's see. Another question is, how did you come up with Gemma's background and story? Well, my mom worked with the Pregnancy Resource Center. My aunt was moving to Kansas, and I had this dream that kind of matched that with a Beverly Lewis novel, and she writes Amish fiction. So that's kind of where that came from, although I decided I did not want to do Amish fiction. I just wanted to make it, I guess, a little bit more my experience than that. And so that's how I came up with it. And then the next question asking me what inspired me to write it was kind of the same thing. It was that initial dream, and I was like, oh, that's cool. It wasn't the first time I'd had a dream that, like, part of it stuck with me, and I was like, oh, I should put that in a book. But, because I was writing already, but it was the first time I sat down to write it, and it came together well enough that I was like, yeah, like, I think I could make this a whole book and not just, like, 2 chapters for the fun of it. So that was awesome. So that's where I first came up with the story idea. Did I outline for Martin Hospitality? Okay, so I did, and I was like, I hated outlines as a kid, and then I took this class where we had to outline for our essays, and so that made me learn how to outline, and so I tried it for the chapters, and it was just like, what would logically happen? Like, this is kind of a spoiler for the first chapter, so if you haven't read it, don't listen. But it'd be like, okay, so she gets evicted, and then she's, like, at the bus stop, and she goes into the cornfield, and then she goes to the Martins, and then Josiah finds her. And so it'd be like just a couple bullet points like that. And so you can uncover your ears now. Anyway, that was kind of, I don't know, how I tried to outline, and I feel like I outlined like 12 chapters worth, and it was funny because the first chapter I wrote was chapter 12, and so I didn't know what number it was going to be at the time. That's just where it fell in the sequence, and so I outlined all the way up to that point to try and make sure I had my ducks in a row, and it was helpful because I did do some rearranging with the outline, but then I just wrote, like, I think I looked at it like twice once I started writing, but having that in my head I do think helped. And the chapter I wrote in my first, I put as chapter 12 in my outline, and that is how it turned out, so I guess it wasn't totally pointless, but at the same time, I'm probably would never outline a book again. Like, that it didn't really work for me, so. What is my favorite writing snack? Dried mango is my favorite writing snack. It's like my favorite snack in general, but we don't get it that often. But I'd say probably what I ate most while writing Martin Hospitality would be like chocolate, random candy stuff, or corn chips. I like corn chips too, so. And those I don't, for whatever reason, sometimes I'll eat those in my room instead of the kitchen. I feel like okay doing that, so I'm sure I did that multiple times while writing it. Who took the best ever photo of your book so far? Oh, I don't know. I'd have to like go check Instagram again or something, but I remember I think the first person who ever took pictures was Annie JC from Just Commonly, because I had her review it, and that was very sweet. That was a great way to start off Martin Hospitality's publication. And then my aunt, Carrie, took a pretty picture with another book she'd gotten in the mail and flowers, and I was like, aw. But I love seeing like any picture you guys post of it. It makes me so happy. So, yeah, keep the pictures coming. How many people that you know personally in your everyday life, not from the internet, have read your book and told you their thoughts? Well, like basically my whole church, which is, I have a small church, but like all the older couples in my church and the young moms in my church and younger girls in my church and all that, they've all read it. Like everybody went out in the first month or so and got a copy, and that was like so awesome. They were very supportive. So there have been all of those, and they definitely would tell me after they read it what they thought. And then locally, a different church that I do not attend in town, but I have some friends who attend, their women's book club also read my book, and so that was like a dozen ladies or more who read it, and they invited me over to like talk about it with them in person at one of their houses, and it was so sweet, and I loved it. So I'd say, I don't know, overall I've probably had like, I don't know, 30 different people, and oftentimes they're like relatives who are all just passing the book around, but it's really sweet, and I love getting feedback, especially when it's positive, but even the like criticisms I get, I know is because they're trying to help me, and it is helpful. So even though I wouldn't necessarily change Martin Hospitality now, it plays into the sequel a lot. I like taking people's pulse to see kind of what they expect in the sequel, to know how to to know where I need to take it, and also like what I can do to surprise people. So, let's see, what else? If you could choose one line in your book to sum up your life, what would it be? Oh, like my personal tagline for my life from my book. Yikes. Well, I'm really horrible at remembering what I wrote, so let me think. Some of the quotes I know I have in there are like, this isn't really spoilery, but you can cover your ears if you want to, or skip ahead, is like at the end of the first chapter, Josiah tells her that like just for today everything's going to be alright. And so, I mean, I guess that could kind of be my mantra, like, I can, like, if I make it through today, it'll be okay. And so I do that sometimes on hard days, I guess. Otherwise, I'm not sure what else I do. What else would fit? I think there's one point where Gemma's having a rough time with Ferris, and she's like, it's going to be a really long night. And that's kind of like, I realized that a lot at like 10. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be a long night, because I'm like just sitting down to write or something. And I realized that I'm going to be up really late. Or when I'm babysitting or something, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're not going to nap. This is going to be lovely. So some things apply, but I wouldn't say, I don't know if I have something in there that's like me to a T, because I kind of tried to avoid doing that. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to do it from memory. Okay, sorry. I'm reading questions off my phone and videoing with my mom's phone, so I keep losing them. My phone keeps shutting off. The next question is, funniest error you found in there while editing. Okay, again, it's kind of hard to like pull this from my memory, but I remember there was one time where I mentioned something about a car seat at the beginning of a chapter, and it was like totally pointless. Like, it didn't even make sense. Like, a random sentence about a car seat in the middle of getting ready for the Oktoberfest or something. And I was like, what? And I wasn't even the one who found it. I think Ivy Rose found it. And she was like, what are you talking about? I think I missed it. And I was like, I have no idea where that came from or why it's there. And so, yeah, I just deleted it. And that was that. And it was really bizarre. I was like, what was I actually going somewhere with that? I have no idea. So it's usually things like that, or sometimes I repeat words or even like half sentences and such, because I'll start writing a sentence and then I'm like, wait, where do I want to go with this? And then I like write the whole sentence. So there's things like that where I'm like, oh, said it twice in the same sentence. So, but yeah, I remember the car seat one being really random, and everybody was like, what? And I was like, I don't know where that came from. I also feel like I mixed up people one time. Like, I said the wrong person who was talking, and it made it, like, yeah, totally laughable. Okay, let's see what other questions we have here. Did you write anyone's character based off what you or your family are like, or things you and your family have been through? Okay, so like I said, my mom worked at our local pregnancy resource center. She taught, like, parenting classes and birth classes and such to young girls from our high school who were expecting. And so, locally, and so that was kind of some experience with girls from that situation, even though I only ever met a couple of them. And then there was also, I mean, I'm the conservative homeschooling family. We don't have a farm, but I had that background in general, Christian, all of that. And kind of a smaller, tight-knit community as well, I suppose. And all the siblings and everything. As far as basing anyone's character off someone, people always think Mr. and Mrs. Martin I wrote to be my parents. And I kind of did, because I was like, I'm going to use the same parental dynamics as my family, but at the same time, they're not the same. Like, both of my parents, my mom is not as laid back or, like, flighty as Mrs. Martin, and my dad is more laid back than Mr. Martin, like, for sure. Even though people view him as kind of a sterner, more solemn person, he's really not. Like, he's a video gamer. So, Mr. Martin is not. So, I guess I kind of took, I don't know, almost the perceptions of my parents, because, like, Mrs. Martin works in the birth world, and so does my mom. And I think I made Mr. Martin an architect, and my dad's a lawyer. So, I took some things, but I didn't make them my parents. Like, they are their own people. So yeah, I guess that was mainly it. And then, oh, and also there was one scene in particular. This isn't really a spoiler, but it does tell you something that happens to Gemma, so it's up to you. Gemma gets glass in her foot at one point. Like, she knocks over a lamp and, like, gets some of it in her foot, which is like this. And that came from a family story. Someone knocked off a lava lamp that we brought into our kitchen, which is the only place in our whole house with tile. And someone brought it into the kitchen. I think they were trying to get a new light bulb or throw a light bulb away, and it got knocked off, and part of it broke. And so there was glass on the floor. The mom and dad weren't home, and we were trying to clean it up. And it was like, my sister got some in her foot, and it was like, it was really bad. It bled everywhere, and it got really deep into her foot, even though we didn't know it at the time. So it was like 4 days later, and she was having to get it out, and it was really nasty. I was the one who helped her. I don't do well with blood, so I decided, like, as one more thing to throw into Gemma's poor life, I was like, oh yeah, I'll have her step on glass, because I've seen how that goes. And she throws up at one point, like, food she'd eaten or something as, like, a day bug, and I had that all the time when I was a kid. So I took a couple, you know, small things like that here and there, but Sorry, I lost my spot. How did you decide on the name Ferris, or did it just kind of come to you? So Ferris, Martin, I don't know, it's just like the name I decided to have for the family, and then, but my great-grandparents, all on, like my mom and then my maternal grandmother's side, are Martins. So my grandmother used to be a Martin. And their names were Margaret, Eloise, and Walter Ferris. And I called them Grandmama and Granddaddy. And so those were, that's where I got the name Ferris. I love the name Ferris. Like, it's so cool. And so I thought it sounded kind of modern, but I think it was like my great-grandfather's, like his mother's maiden name or something. But since I had already ended up using their last name, and it works because they really were known for hospitality, it's who the book's dedicated to, it was really sweet, and so I wanted to use the name Ferris for the baby. Did you ever feel like giving up, and what kept you from doing it? Yeah, I mean, again, I got bogged down several times, but because I ended up surrounding myself with people about the same time I really started writing Martin Hospitality, I kept from getting to a point, and I wasn't to a point where I was like, I'm done with this, I hate this. Like, I never really got there, but at the same time, I wasn't pushing myself toward this deadline. I just wrote the draft as I felt like it. And that was kind of nice, and I didn't really have all these people even knowing what they were getting into. Like, now everyone's read some of my books, and they're like, oh, we want more, and I'm like, too bad. So, I mean, I will eventually. I'm working on it. But, you know, it's like I didn't have quite that same, like, time demand expectation from people who were excited for me. And don't get me wrong, I love the support and enthusiasm. But it was a little less pressure at the time, and I just kind of wrote it as I felt like it, which helped me from burning out like I did when I tried to write the sequel last year. So I guess it was the people I surrounded myself with, and the fact that I had no deadline kept me from giving up. Oh yeah, here someone else again asked what inspired Martin Hospitality, and I kind of already covered that. It was a crazy dream I had. My favorite scene in the book was probably, I honestly love, like, basically anything with Gemma and Josiah in it, and Holly's brother, Jake, also ended up being a character I really liked, and he was, like, such a fly-on-the-wall character. But I loved him, and he made me, like, smile because he was quirky and he was weird. So, yeah, there was that. And then, let's see. I'm trying to think if there's any specific interaction. I love the interaction. This isn't really spoilery. It's just cute. It just tells you, like, a detail. Gemma's wearing Josiah's sweatshirt at one point, and I forget why. I think it's, like, the snow day or something in Kansas. So she's wearing a sweatshirt because she doesn't have, like, basically anything. And so that part's cute, and I love the time when she can't get Ferris to sleep and she's afraid like she's gonna wake up the whole house with him before she's moved, and Mr. Martin's the only other one up, and so he comes and he like helps her get Ferris to sleep, like just bounces on with her, and they talk a little bit, and it's kind of the first time we were like, oh, maybe he's not this horrible person. So I really loved kind of their relationship that develops from like this super tense thing to something sweeter and more natural. Am I still working on the sequel, and how is that going? Yes, I am. I'm still plotting it, because I tried to draft it last year and it wasn't going anywhere, and it was like, what's wrong? So I am still plotting it. I'm using scene cards, and I think that's helped. I'm going to try and start drafting it again soon so that hopefully I can get back to actually like drafting it and getting a good first draft down this year. And ideally it'd be published this year, but it probably won't be until about a year from now, which would make it spring of 2019, even though spring of 2018 was my original goal. So sequels are hard though. And I'm gonna go ahead and skip down to the one who asks me here, is the next book going to be the last one about the Martins? And the answer is that's not my plan. I would like to do a trilogy following the two characters I'm following. And that makes the sequel even harder because it's also like the middle of this series. And so everyone knows sequels are either the best or the worst book in a series. So I'm like, no pressure. So I'm really trying to get it right before I get any deeper into writing it, because that was not working well for me. If you picked one Bible verse to display the message feel of your novel, what verse would it be? Maybe you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, because it's kind of what Gemma, it's part of what she finds out, and she also has to learn not to rely on her own strength, which is very much what she tried to do, and that's why her life got really hard when she didn't have so many people around to help her, which was amazing, and it's kind of what helped turn her to God too. So, any hints about what the next book will be about? And they're like, yeah, we're not pressuring you, but, yeah, I mean, it's gonna keep, I figure everyone knows by now, but you can cover your ears if you want. It's gonna follow Jemma and Josiah together still, like, as a couple, basically. And I want the second book to be about, like, them as parents, and then the third book to be about, like, them for either even further on, like, toward the end of their lives, basically. I don't know how well that's actually going to work. That's part of my issue, but I've gotten really set on that, and I think it would be sweet. And then you can uncover your ears. I might also do, like, spin-off stories or something. Like, I'd love to follow Annalise separately, and I would love to follow Ferris. And I don't know if I can do that, like, at the same time in the next books, or if he'd need his own book. And maybe, like, Emmeline or someone, I don't know, like, pick Martins and, like, grandchildren, like, just keep it going, you know, like, make it, I don't know, some people think that's a bad idea to do. Some people don't like all these, like, novellas of side characters around it, but I feel like I would with a few characters. So no, there will be more books, and that's kind of what they will be about, generally. How did I name my characters? I named them with the first names that popped into my head. Gemma was originally Gemma Pennyworth, and I changed it to Gemma Ebworthy. That, I don't even know where that came from. And that's, like, that was basically it. And then everybody else was literally the first name that popped into my head. And the only one I think I had to change was Annalise. Annalise's name was originally just Elise, which I really liked, actually, and it didn't, sorry, my grandmother keeps calling, so I need to wrap this up. I didn't end up keeping that because I also had Elias as a character, and Elias and Elise look a lot alike, even on the page, and they sound a lot alike, and so I decided that she needed to have a slightly different name, so I did Annalise instead of just Elise. So that's how I named them. And then, what is one thing that God taught you through the writing of Martin Hospitality? I guess, like, patience, and that he can really do a lot with it. Like, I couldn't believe when it won one of the Reader's Favorites awards. Like, that was amazing to me. And just how many people, like, love it and are so supportive, and how it's, like, really touched people and everything. That's just amazing to me. So I guess that I really can write a book, and it really can be a good job, and that he can help me with that, and it can do all this he can do all these amazing things through it. And that's, like, so inspiring to me. And kind of motivates me to keep going. And that kind of is my ministry, is to write books. Because I can get them to people I would never meet in person. And last question. How many, this again, I think everyone knows, but how many kids are Gemma and Josiah going to have? I'm trying to decide if I actually want to tell you. Okay, fine, I'll tell you. Obviously, there's already Ferris, who's not Josiah's. And then they're going to have 2 together, but I'm not telling you the genders. And that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you for all of the awesome questions, and I hope that was enjoyable for everybody. And check out the rest of the blog post this is going to be in. I'll link to it if you're watching this from YouTube. But Martin Hospitality will be a year old tomorrow, February 4th, and that's, like, so amazing to me to see how far it's come. So thank you guys so much for your support and your enthusiasm and all the questions, because I would not be here without you guys, and I've had a lot of fun doing this. And I hope, that we're on this journey for a lot longer. I have a lot more books in my head, so we'll see if I can ever get them out into the page, and y'all will have so much more to help me with and be excited about. Thank you guys. Bye.